I'm so excited to be here with you today, John, and introduce this little documentary we put together about generative and AI art. But before we get to our feature presentation, I wanted to put this doc in some context. So for those new to crypto art, what is SuperRare and why is it important?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so for folks who are new to crypto art and SuperRare, SuperRare is an NFT marketplace exclusively focused on fine digital art. We launched in early 2018, and different from lots of other players in the space, since day one have been focused on art as a vertical, and specifically one-of-one art produced by artists that have been hand-selected by our professional curators. Little, I guess, background context, over the past 5 years, SuperRare has done close to $300 million in sales exclusively with these one-of-one art pieces.
Amazing. Indeed, one of the things I love most about SuperRare is that you've taken the brand power and distribution strategy of traditional art galleries and classic auction houses like Christie and Sotheby's and democratized access to those tools for the artists and collectors in your network, exposing all that raw data for the very first time. And by doing so, you're helping reinforce the legitimacy and capability of these digital artists, treating them finally as the museum-grade artists they are, rather than just as an NFT creator or even grifters looking to make a quick buck. Can you speak to that ethos of SuperRare and why it's so important to distinguish these types of fine art sold on SuperRare from the type of NFT projects we find on other platforms?
Yeah, absolutely. SuperRare has been about authenticity and curation since day one, right? This is really where we felt like there was the biggest opportunity to really help grow and improve the art market. So unlike other platforms that have large sets of collectibles, we're working with artists that we feel like are, cutting edge, have very unique styles, not necessarily artists with the biggest following, but these are artists who we feel like can really benefit from, what the technology has to offer. So these are artists who are, kind of digitally native with their practice specifically. And I think this really is the biggest opportunity for, the art space and NFTs. I also think it's pretty interesting to think about, there's a lot of discussion about this, the royalties debate, as we like to call it in the NFT space. And for us, it was very important, since day one, we've had royalties that are part of the secondary market. And I think as the space develops, we're going to see collectors also really appreciating the value that, royalties bring to the space.
Absolutely. It's really one of the reasons I'm such a big fan of your guys is exactly that point, is that you guys are really artist focused and about creating communities around these individual artists. And now, in terms of our topic today, I wanted to get your thoughts on the explosion of generative and AI art that we've seen over the last couple of years, especially the role that technology, AI, as we're seeing today, is increasingly playing. What are your thoughts on that whole, the growth of this generative AI art movement we've been seeing?
I mean, for one, I think it's really exciting. Personally, I love generative art. That was kind of how I got into the space was, creating my own generative art. And I think a lot of the growth we're seeing is really because these technologies add a new dimension to art, right? Like kind of the algorithmic nature of generative art really is a new tool for artists to, express a concept or express themselves, right? It's adding new dimensions to the art. And, the AI component is almost that on steroids. I sort of think about generative, if you think about a pencil sketch, making the jump to generative, that's an order of magnitude of difference. And then if you make another jump over to AI, you kind of can take all those algorithms that people are developing in the generative space, but then add machine learning. So there's this computer generated element that's incredibly interesting. And you also hear a lot of discussion about, well, are the robots going to take all the jobs? Like, is there any room for artists with, AI art? And this is actually not a new discussion. We saw this with digital photography, right? It was, photography is an art craft, and now anyone can take a picture, with a camera. And sure, I could take a picture with my iPhone. It doesn't mean my photography is any good or anyone's going to care about it, right? These are new tools. And I think we're seeing an explosion in adoption because they're very powerful. It's very exciting if you're an artist to be able to, explore parts of your mind and your creative craft that you couldn't really without these pieces of technology. And so, I love, some of the artists that are part of the documentary, like Matt Kane and Helena Sarin, right? Like these are two really interesting artists who are, Matt with his generative work, Helena with her AI work, and then also Sasha with the AI poetry, right? This is, they're creating art that you couldn't really create without these technologies. And I think that's what's so exciting.
Oh, it's exactly why I was so excited to do this documentary and, why we chose these specific artists. They've all come to this medium of art through their own unique journey, and they express themselves through their own signature style. As coders, poets, or painters, all of them are embracing this medium from a different perspective, which we'll see very soon in our feature presentation. But John, before we get to that, any final thoughts you want to leave our audience with today?
I would love to express it. It's a really exciting time to be in the arts. I really feel like there's sort of a confluence of these technologies coming together, really creating a digital renaissance. AI and generative are kind of at the forefront of this, and it's all woven together through the power of Web3 and crypto. So it's a really exciting time, and I would love to encourage everybody who hasn't, go check out superrare.com. We're have the best curation team and some of the best artists in the world producing work on the platform.
Yeah, and I just have to say, from working with you guys on this, it's been an absolute pleasure because very rarely do you get to work with people in this space who have an understanding of art history and the way in which this current moment becomes part of that entire history. And that we've seen moments like this and pushback many times over the course of art history. So just a huge fan of what you guys are doing. Thank you so much for working with us on this doc. We're going to have more for you over the coming months. And with that said, please enjoy our feature presentation.
The most fundamental aspect of what it means to be human is to be able to give birth and create something.
In one image, you can kind of mix so many styles, so many ideas, and this compression of information that basically comes as a kind of mathematical term of the neural networks.
That's what the medium of the blockchain, it really impresses upon you. There's so new novel concepts to use and to respond to. I see it in so many other artists.
Despite its current moment in the spotlight, especially in the world of digital art, generative and AI art has slowly emerged as important movements in the post-digital chapter of art history.
I started as a painter that was working primarily with oils on canvas. That's how I first got a gallery representation back in 2004. But for me as an artist, I realized I never really cared about what materials I was using. Back then I was going between, I started to use fabric, I was using oil, I started layering resin. For me, it was all about how do I manifest my vision the best way.
Casey Reyes, who is the author of, creator of the processing language, the main language that generative art is using, he and his companion, they wrote a book. And I saw it in Barnes and Noble and was kind of really thrilled and to discover that the software that I was doing for a living can be used for art creation, because I kind of have a background in analog art, but I never thought it's possible to use software and write programs to create art. It
was when I encountered a poem by the famous Fluxus poet Alison Knowles. And this poem of hers was I think this was at MoMA in New York. And it's a poem that she co-wrote in 1967 with a programmer named James Tenney, who I think was working at Bell Labs. And so it's really considered one of the first computer-generated texts, computer-generated poems. ever written. And I encountered it, like I said, in this museum. And it was presented as kind of both a text and as a sculptural installation, presented on this amazing kind of dot matrix paper, kind of cascading from the printer. And that, to me, I think really lit a fire in my imagination, both in terms of the idea that you could write real, creative, beautiful, profound poetry with a computer, but also that a poem could be presented as a piece of art in a museum like that was also kind of revelatory to me.
Hey visionaries, thank you for tuning in. For more free crypto content like this, head over to realvision.com/crypto. You'll get early access to the most brilliant minds in the space to cut through the noise, get in-depth analysis, and get you ahead of the curve with unbiased insights.